Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my channel. My channel is Diasporan African News Info Connect. That's Diasporan African News Info Connect. So, bringing you your daily news all around the UK and around the world from the diaspora. So today, I'm going to be, talking about Bill Cosby. Most of you have probably come across this. But yes, Bill Cosby has been released from prison. A judge has overruled the cases, which therefore he has been released. Now, do I think it's viable? Do I think it's a good idea? Well, I don't know. A man with so many cases such as that, this obviously needs to be looked into. But that's a story for another day. But I mean, well, yeah, he has been released. Obviously, Bill Cosby is an icon, famous, probably the most famous black comedian that you would ever come across, known worldwide for the hit series The Cosby Show. So, yes, he is out, and a lot of people are not happy about it. A lot of people are not happy, but I mean, he can rejoin his family and make amends and make ends meet. I'm kind of, because Bill Cosby was one of my favorite comedians still, but I'm kind of happy and kind of not, because, looking at the case, the amount of, cases that he has against him, the amount of people who have made allegations against him. It's just absolutely phenomenal from the 80s up until now. So, yeah, well, he's out. Please, viewers, let me know your intake on this. Let's have a discussion about this, should Bill Cosby be out of prison? What do you think, let me know. And from Viage, till the next vlogging, till the next news bulletin, I leave you with the release of Bill Cosby.
Lester Holt.
Good day. We're coming back on the air with more breaking news about Bill Cosby. The comedian was just released from prison after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned the 83-year-old actor's sex assault conviction. Cosby served more than 2 years of a 3 to 10-year sentence, convicted of drugging and molesting Temple University employee Andrea Constant. NBC Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins us. Pete, what can you tell us about the legal reasoning that led to this decision?
Well, the court says the facts are very straightforward, that when the victim initially came forward, the district attorney decided not to file charges, that there were too many problems with the evidence, and that he publicly made a statement that he would not pursue these charges, and that he did so in order to free up the possibility that Cosby could be forced to testify in a civil trial that she filed against him later, and that he could not in that civil trial then invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, because he was told by the district attorney and believed the advice of his own lawyers that anything he said in the civil trial could not be used against him in the criminal trial if the state tried it again. So he did testify, he did incriminate himself, he said things that were incriminating in the civil trial, and then the state of Pennsylvania came back and charged him with the crime. What the Supreme Court said today is, you can't do that. You gave him a reason to believe that he could testify at the civil trial without putting himself in jeopardy of the criminal prosecution. The Pennsylvania court said, our sense of fair play and decency compels us to believe that the district attorney had to stand by the decision that was made by a predecessor in the office not to charge. So that's the reasoning of the court. The outcome, Lester, is that he cannot be tried again on these charges. That means that the woman at the center of this case she can't be the subject of another criminal prosecution. This one is over. Now, that doesn't mean that other victims could come forward and the state could investigate and decide whether or not to pursue criminal charges based on entirely different facts, but there can't be a retrial on this case.
We know that there were other women who testified of what they thought was similar behavior against them. There's a statute of limitations issue. Would that prevent some of these cases from going forward?
Potentially, and the court doesn't explicitly says here that they're not making any decision about any other potential case or any of the testimony that was offered in the civil trial. They simply say that issue isn't before us and we're not going to answer it.
Pete Williams, thanks very much. And Kate Snow has been covering this from the beginning. She has been in touch with some of Cosby's accusers today. From what you told us earlier, it sounds like there is widespread disappointment in this outcome.
Yeah, I would say disbelief as well. And I want to start, Lester, by telling you that I just got off the phone with one of the attorneys for Andrea Constant, the chief accuser in that case, in that second trial. Her name is Dolores Troiani. On the record, the only thing she would say is that they are reviewing this decision and they'll have no comment or no interviews at this time. But most of those that I've been hearing from throughout the last couple of hours are accusers who I've been in touch with for years now, who really thought this conviction was a sealed deal. It was a victory that would hold forever. And you see pictures there of the more than 20 women that I interviewed years ago for a Dateline special. Those are all women who made various different allegations against Bill Cosby. So some of them I'm reaching back to today, and they're saying things like, oh, my God, what is happening? I can't process this. They are stunned by this legal decision. The women themselves weren't expecting the appeal to go anywhere. They understood that there was an appeal being made, but those women, not being lawyers, thought that it wouldn't lead to any kind of overturning of this conviction. I can read you a couple of comments that I've gotten. One from Eden Turrell. She's one of the accusers of Bill Cosby. She says to me, I'm just finding it here. From the beginning, the rigid constructs of the statute of limitations did not provide protection or a pathway of justice for the women that came out against Cosby. The outdated laws are clearly in place, protecting men in these cases more often than not. This is the story of the Me Too movement that must be included in the narrative now. That's Eden Turrell. Now, just to give you a sense of why she says that, I mean, you just touched on this with Pete Williams. Many of the women who came forward we're talking about events that happened 20, 30 years ago, and by statute could no longer bring a criminal case or sometimes even a civil suit against Bill Cosby. So, as Pete just said, many of those who've made accusations aren't probably going to have a legal recourse. I'd be interested to know what the situation is in California now, because many of the statutes have changed, and in California they now, as I understand it, don't have the same statute of limitations that they had prior to the Me Too movement. So maybe that's a question for Danny Savalos. But what I can tell you is, again, I'm getting a lot of comments of, I'm sick to my stomach, I don't know how to process this. Having talked to these women for years, Lester, they say they went through traumatic events with Bill Cosby. They made allegations of everything from rape to sexual assault to harassment. They will now say that today is yet another traumatic event for them, seeing this reversed.
Kate, thank you. Let me go to NBC legal analyst Danny Savalos here. And it sounds from what we're hearing it would be an uphill battle to try and retry him. But let's say, for example, they do find an alleged victim whose case falls within the statute of limitations. Would they wouldn't be able to use the testimony, essentially, of Bill Cosby himself from a civil suit. So would that make it an even steeper climb?
It would be very difficult because it appears that the court has ruled that all of this evidence is essentially precluded from being used against Bill Cosby. But as we've already mentioned, the statute of limitations has almost certainly passed for some of these older allegations. If there are newer allegations, they may fall within the statute. And the prosecution or the Commonwealth would not be precluded if they had separate independent facts to base that decision. So that is a prosecutorial decision that would depend on whether or not they have new evidence.
And the prosecution also has to look at how much time he's already served and what the likelihood of a conviction would be, correct?
That's right. I mean, the decision to prosecute Cosby at this point for, especially if these are older allegations, is a very difficult one for the prosecution, because they have to weigh that against the resources that they would expend in prosecuting Cosby against the possibility that he might either get acquitted or that these witnesses may not even be able to introduce these prior bad acts witnesses the way they were able to the first time around. The Supreme Court didn't reach that issue, but it is certainly not a sure thing that the prosecution would be able to march in all of these prior bad acts witnesses, and that's women who would testify that Cosby did similar things to them in the past.
All right, Danny, thank you. Let me turn to former Cosby Special Prosecutor Kristen Gibbons-Fedden joining me now on the phone. Let me ask you about this ruling by the court itself. Whether you like Bill Cosby, whether you like this outcome, could you argue that it was a sound decision or not?
You know, listen, I always respect the decisions of any of our esteemed justices. I obviously was on the prosecutorial team, and so I respectfully disagree. And I'm happy to highlight some of the disagreements. But one of the things I do want to highlight is that what the court found, and this is stressed, is that there was an agreement and that the prosecution should not have arrested and or prosecuted Bill Cosby. So they are vacating his conviction. The court did not say that Andrea Constand was being dishonest, was not credible, but in fact a jury actually found to the contrary. They found that he did sexually assault her after rendering her incapable of consent. And I think that's one thing that I hope survivors are able to look at to help themselves find justice. I know that this decision is distressful, but at the very least, a jury of Andrea's peers looked Bill Cosby in the eye and said, "You are guilty of sexually assaulting this woman. Yes, there will be no paper conviction, but he will always have to live with the fact that 12 jurors looked him in the eye and said, guilty, guilty, guilty."
I want to point out Bill Cosby's team released a statement a short time ago, and let me read it here. It says, "We want to thank the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. This is what we have been fighting for, and this is justice and justice for Black America. This is the justice Mr. Cosby has been fighting for. They saw the light. He waived his Fifth Amendment right and settled out of court. He was given a deal, and he had immunity. He should have never been charged." Kristen, I heard you on our sister channel MSNBC react to that statement. What were your thoughts?
Justice for Black America, and I know I'm on the phone at the moment, but I'm a Black female. Justice for Black America is for us to be able to go outside and not expect to have a knee on our neck and be murdered, right? Justice for Black America is equality. Justice in Black America is not allowing an individual who sexually assaults other people go free. And the other thing I want to highlight, which I highlighted on the sister channel, is that justice for Shalom Lasha, for Lieslat Lublin, for Kelly Johnson, 3 Black females who were sexually assaulted by Bill Cosby, is not this. So for Bill Cosby, especially after giving that pound cake speech, to say that this is justice for Black Americans is disturbing, distressful, and disgusting.
What avenues look available to the prosecution team to retry if they wish, and do you think that that will be exercised?
Unfortunately, there will be no retrial is the way I see it. And Lester, in fairness, I have not had a chance to digest this 79-page opinion. But the reason I say that is because what the court deemed is that we were not permitted to arrest him, let alone have a full trial. What the court is saying is that Bruce Castor made an agreement that Bill Cosby would never have been prosecuted and that our office should have honored that agreement. Now, like I said, I respect our justices, but I completely disagree. You know, and I wanted to just state that I know one of the prior guests had said that Bill Cosby had made incriminating statements and that it was relied upon. I want to just make sure that the air is clear. Bruce Castor only was only the district attorney of Montgomery County. And so the only non-prosecution that he could, not that he did, but that he could have made was for any crimes in Montgomery County. At that point, Bill Cosby had already given a statement to the police indicating that he engaged in consensual sexual activity with Andrea Constand. That is exactly what he testified to in his deposition. The incriminating statements were statements made in other jurisdictions, which Bruce Castor had absolutely no jurisdiction over and could not bind find those other prosecutors. So I disagree in terms of the incriminating statements not being permissible or not being admissible in other jurisdictions. I think a court has to make that finding, but I don't think that any other prosecutions of Bill Cosby are going to be bound by any preclusions of this four-day deposition testimony.
In any way, do you take this as an admonishment of the prosecution team?
No, I don't, Lester, and here's why. I think that one thing that I want to highlight is the common pleas court judge who was actually there kind of overseeing the entirety of the hearing, because we had, I think, a day-and-a-half hearing on this very topic, found that we were permitted to go forward. In addition to that, the Superior Court affirmed or agreed with the common pleas court judge. So, in other words, reasonable attorneys found that we were permitted to go forward, so I don't see it as an admonishment. I do, however, see it as a barrier. Non-disclosure agreements or non-prosecutorial agreements, all these are paper prisons prohibiting victims and survivors from coming forward. Keep in mind that what the court basically said today was that Bruce Castor unilaterally made a decision on behalf of Andrea Constant, and that's not what DAs or prosecutors are supposed to do. They're supposed to look out for the Commonwealth and make a decision.
All right, Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, we appreciate you coming on. I want to go to Pete Williams right now, who has a little more texture and insight, really, into this dispute over the legal validity or the legal reasoning in this decision today. Pete?
Well, I think this is why the decision will be hard for some people to take and may seem controversial. If a prosecutor wants to give somebody immunity, there's a way to do it. You go to court and you get an immunity order from a judge. That wasn't done here. What the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania says is that doesn't matter. Nonetheless, Bill Cosby reasonably thought that he wouldn't be prosecuted and couldn't be. That's what his lawyers told him. That's what the DA told him. And it would be a violation of due process now for the state to go ahead and use that evidence that he admitted in civil trial against him. But that's why this will be a controversial decision, Lester.
And were there other grounds for the appeal, or was that the sole issue that the defense put forward?
Well, that's the sole issue. That there are other issues that the defense put forward, but that's the basis on which the Supreme Court decided this case, saying that the conviction has to be tossed out and he can't be tried again on these charges. All
right, Pete, thank you. Let me go back to Kate Snow, who, as we note, has interviewed many of the accusers and is hearing from some of them right now. As this begins to settle in and people begin to absorb this, is there a sense of justice was ultimately done to the extent that a jury found him guilty based on what they had heard?
Well, I think, as you were hearing from the former prosecutor, that there is a sense that they did have their day in court and that they did get heard and that the jury, at least, believed them. And that, as has been pointed out, was not overturned in this Supreme Court of Pennsylvania decision. But at the same time, it is now tinged with knowing that the conviction does not stand and that he will be a free man now. And I think that is very difficult for people to take today. Lester, I'm having a lot of people telling me they're too emotional to talk. They're too distraught and upset to even put into words how they're feeling in this moment.
All right. Kate Snow, thank you very much. We'll have much more on this story tonight on NBC Nightly News. For now, I'm Lester Holt, NBC News, New York. Have a good day.